What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Bootleg Football Podcast, NFC East Draft Recap Edition. I hope and pray that we get as much salt in the comments for this one as I'm expecting, because NFC East fans, on average, are the saltiest bunch in the NFL. And if you disagree with them on that, I pray for you, because these are people that pride themselves on how much they hate each other. And I guarantee you at least 60% of the listeners for this podcast are solely listening because of how much they hate everybody else's team, and they're secretly hoping that we bash on them. But I don't think we will, because all four of these teams had, I think, varying degrees of excellent drafts, including the Giants and our friend Dave Gettleman, who we love to bag on so much. Even he did well. So I welcome all of you salty-ass NFC East draft fans. I hope you guys are ready for a nice, long podcast breaking down what we loved and what we sort of didn't love about your individual classes. I'm going to welcome in my co-host here, EJ Snyder. EJ, how you doing, and what are you drinking?
We're getting to talk about football, and that is always the best part of my week, so I'm doing extremely well. And that might have something to do with what I'm drinking. This is something I introduced you to, but listeners of my other podcast, Bears Over Beers, will be familiar with this, but this is probably a new one for the bootleggers. This is called a diver down, and you take favorite...
Oh, God.
Oh, the reaction.
You're doing this at 10 at night?
I am. So I introduced Brett to these when I was down at his house in Southern California, and this is take your favorite Mexican lager. A lot of people will choose a Corona here. I will say, please don't choose a Corona Light if you can get away with it. Mine happens to be a Pacifico. Anyways, your favorite clear Mexican lager, and typically in bottles is how this is done. Pop the cap off that bottle and put a float of about 1 ounce of Bacardi Limon, which is lemon rum, on the top. Put your finger on the top of the bottle, flip that thing upside down, suck a little bit of the pressure out of that, and you have a delicious summer beverage. However, it comes with a caveat. Be extremely careful. It's greater than the sum of its parts. It goes down very easily, especially when the weather's hot. And it's 2 drinks in every bottle, not 1 at that point. So if you have about 3 diver downs, you're probably going to be down yourself, or at least not caring if that might happen. So drink responsibly. It's a delicious beverage. You're welcome, and you've been warned.
Yeah, he says 1 ounce, but I promise you fill the entire neck of a Corona with rum and or vodka, whichever citrus-flavored hard alcohol you want. You're going to be feeling it. I really hope that you don't have plans for the rest of the day if you're doing diver downs on a hot day, because you're not going to make whatever those plans are. Guarantee it. Trust me, I know firsthand. I have I guess I could say, slightly less dangerous drink in my hand right now.
Says you.
Says me. From good folks over at the Virginia Distillery Company. They are a craft distillery in the Virginia Highlands who specializes in American single malt whiskeys, which is basically Scotch in terms of ingredients and process, but not made in Scotland. I have their port cask finish, which, well, I should say this. It's, to the best of my knowledge, it's a mix of their American single malt that they distill in-house, and then they source also some Highland-style Scotch, and they age both of them together in a blend in a export barrels. So it kind of has the same port finish with some American-grown single malt, American-grown barley single malt, and then some Scotch or single malt Scotch from the Highland region. So it's got some American influence. It has some Scotch influence with the port cask finish, and all of that comes together in a beautiful harmony of dark fruit and smoke, little hint of barrel spice. Phenomenal job by them. Highly recommend you go to the Virginia Distillery Company online, see if they ship to your state, or if you're in Virginia, just go to whatever your local liquor store is, because they probably have it. And I know we have probably a lot of DC and Virginia natives listening to this pod, considering we're doing the NFC East. So highly recommend you guys try it. But we're going to start off tonight with a man that we've loved to rag on for the entirety of this show's existence the last couple months, and that's Dave Gettleman, because I think for the first time in BFP history, we are going to be singing his praises. He did a really damn good job on this draft for the Giants.
Yeah, generally, folks that have followed me for a while understand that I give Dave Gettleman a lot of what I would call justified crap for the decisions he makes, because he makes a lot of crap decisions. And generally, I don't bag on people in the NFL. I don't really think it's good for business, but Gettleman's decisions have been bordering on negligence in several cases. This draft, however, as you said, didn't happen that way. Not the case in this draft. He was really solid. He and his staff did great work. I actually ended up sitting behind them at the Senior Bowl, and I texted my other podcast co-host a picture of Dave Gettleman, and I said, "I'm sitting right behind Dave Gettleman. Pray for me. That. I don't want to hurt him." JP was like just laughing because I'm notorious for being hard on Dave G. But this draft happened to line up and unfold really well with what he likes to do, and he drove it right down the middle of the fairway. You got to take the gifts when they come to you, and he did. He loves offensive linemen. He loves defensive linemen. He stayed away from those. He's been pretty heavy on those in previous drafts. And then they needed to reload linebacker, and he did that as well. Threw in a couple of other players that we'll talk about, but honestly, for what happened in front of him and what he could have done to screw it up, he avoided all those pitfalls, and he deserves credit for that. And quite frankly, the Giants are going to benefit.
Yeah, I'll give a quick rundown for the people that aren't watching on YouTube that don't see the graphic on screen of all their picks. I'll give you a quick rundown verbally here. Round 1, Andrew Thomas, left tackle out of Georgia. Round 2, Xavier McKinney, a kind of do-it-all safety from Alabama that played, literally almost every spot in that defense you can think of. He played the Minka Fitzpatrick type role where it's nickel, it's deep safety, it's box safety, it's dime linebacker. He did everything but outside corner, really. So he do it all safety for them in round 2. Round 3, Matt Parrott, a super duper long tackle out of Connecticut that has some really high upside. Round 4, Darnay Holmes, one of my favorite kind of, I guess you could say more of a pure nickel in this class, out of UCLA. Again, saw him down at the Senior Bowl. Did a really, really nice job that week against a lot of great receivers. Round 5, Shane Lemieux, one of our favorite guards, especially for a 5th-round value. Round 6, Cam Brown. A little bit more of a, I don't want to say controversial linebacker pick. He has some staunch fans, and he has some very hardcore haters. I'm kind of more in the middle where I can see both sides of the argument, but for a 6th-round pick, whatever. Round 7, Carter Coughlin, one of your guys. TJ Brunson, also, I know you watched him. I did not, so I don't really have an opinion on him. Chris Williamson out of Minnesota in round 7, and then their 4th 7th-round pick was Tay Crowder, linebacker, out of Georgia, one of those other linebackers you alluded to. So a very much, as you said, this was a double in the gap kind of class. Not a whole lot of home runs, but man, they're moving base runners. That's for damn sure. I don't really see any picks that I actively dislike, and I think at minimum, they probably got 4 starters out of this class. Which, if you can get 4 starters, it's a pretty damn good class. I do want to start with Andrew Thomas. Was he my highest rated tackle? No. But at the same time, they need excellent pass protection above all else. And even though I had higher overall grades on Jed Wills and Mekhi Becton, Andrew Thomas is a phenomenal pass protector. He's much further along than Tristan Wirfs, who was connected to them for a long time. From a technical perspective and length and power and everything like that, like he's going to start for them for a decade. And I think if you're getting a decade solid starter at a premium position, it doesn't really matter if you had somebody else graded higher. Like, you're still getting a great player. So for me, I don't hate the Andrew Thomas pick because he's still a really damn good player, even if he wasn't my highest graded tackle.
Yeah, I think Andrew Thomas is great. And you mentioned Wirfs, right? So the top 4 tackles, you mentioned all of them. And for Gettleman, I'm actually kind of glad that he avoided Wirfs in this spot at pick 4. Now, if he'd traded down, all bets are off. But at 4, I don't think Wirfs was a great fit for what they really needed. And you alluded to that with the pass protection. Wirfs is not there yet. And quite frankly, he might end up as a really, really tremendous and athletic guard in the sort of physical marvel Kyle Long type, Kyle Long in his prime mode. Might not even end up as tackle. They'll probably, again, Wirfs will probably get a shot at tackle. But Andrew Thomas, definitely a tackle. Definitely a great pass protector with length. All those Jake Fromm highlights that you watched in quarterback scouting, like Andrew Thomas was one of the 2 guys that was protecting his blind side. And that is going to be really good news for Daniel Jones and really, quite frankly, the rest of the Giants offense. So somewhat of a chalk pick. I think Gettleman would have reached a little bit more to go for Wirfs. Thomas is a much more sort of, like you said, double in the gap, solid right down the middle of the fairway. Like, we got a guy, he's going to do the thing we need. There's not a lot of work to do there. That's just a great start for the Giants draft.
And McKinney, I think, Xavier McKinney from Alabama is the same kind of thing where it's like, does he have the range to play center field? No. Is he an amazing open field tackler? No. Is he super big and physical? Like, he's good in terms of physicality, but he's not like a Cam Chancellor type or, any of those like super, like, he's not even a Kyle Duggar, I think, in terms of like his ability to come downhill and smack you. But what he is really exceptionally gifted in terms of recognizing offenses and putting himself in the right position. Like, he is very, very, very smart. And if you're trusted to call a Nick Saban defense, that alone makes you one of the smarter safeties in your class. There was I think it was against LSU, if I remember correctly, there was a play that was pointed out to me, and it was kind of enigmatic of what he is, where he's playing a sail technique. And if you don't know what a sail technique is, it's you're playing zone and you're carrying a receiver up the seam with outside leverage. So you're playing outside of the receiver, going up the seam while looking at the quarterback and keeping the receiver in your kind of peripheral vision as you carry them up the seam. Before Joe Burrow even looked to the flat, he saw the release of the running back out to the flat and knew that if Burrow saw him carrying the seam, he was immediately going to check to the flat because there was nobody there. So he wheeled off the receiver and immediately broke on the flat before Joe even looked there and threw it. Joe didn't even see him look at the receiver. And he still got there in the flat on time. And he missed the tackle, I'll say that. That's part of the Xavier McKinney experience. Well, he'll put himself in the perfect position and then screw it up by missing the tackle, which is why he wasn't a first-round pick to me. But it's rare to find a safety that can not just process his responsibility, but also process how a quarterback sees his responsibility and where he's going to go. And so I think if he can improve himself as a tackler, he can be an excellent starting safety in this defense, even if he's limited athletically. Again, that's just the one thing I want him to clean up. But mentally speaking, he's the smartest safety in this class to me.
Yeah, McKinney gives New York a really quality defender in the sort of new mold of a positionless DB, right? The idea of, is he free? Is he strong? Is he a nickel? The answer is yeah. Does he play free very well? No, he doesn't. And he didn't do it that often. He would start a game there, and then Saban would move him down, but not just down to strong safety. Again, like you said, dimebacker, strong safety, straight up nickel routes where he's pure slot man coverage, covering backs and tight ends in the flat. He does all that sort of intermittently, and Maiden would come in behind him and play free safety and allow him to do that. So he's got great versatility and range, and I think they're going to be able to use that. A lot of folks had suggested perhaps they should take Isaiah Simmons and use him in the same sort of role. I think McKinney gives them a similar type of value, but a full round later. And that's, again, waiting for the draft to unfold and picking up good value. Do I love his tackling? I don't. But I do love his smarts. I do love his speed, quite frankly. In the underneath, he is very quick to close. and gets himself, like you said, in the right place at the right time. Whether he finishes that play is another matter, but generally it's not just going to be one-on-one him versus somebody else. And there will be a couple of times, hang on Giants fans, there will be a couple of times when it's just McKinney, everybody else is accounted for, and he misses the guy. I guarantee it's going to happen. Will it happen all that often? I don't think it will. Hopefully, like Brett said, it cleans up a little bit in terms of his tackling, but he is going to make more plays than he misses. He is a very smart defender. And we don't want to, I don't think we want to give the impression that he's physically limited. He's not slow. This is not a plodding guy that runs like he's got a piano on his back.
He's just average, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, he's average, but against SEC athletes, that's pretty darn good. And it will hold up in the pros. So it's a good pick for them. I think it's a good spot to get him. Again, if you were going to get McKinney in the first round, you're probably sort of overdrafting him for his overall game. But where they got him is great. After that, they go round 3, pick 99, Matt Peart. We had talked about this after day 1 of the live stream. We're like, what if Gettleman gets, and we didn't say Peart, it was another tackle.
It was Josh
out
Jones,
of Houston.
I think, right?
It was Josh Jones out of Houston. We said, what if Josh Jones is there and he takes him too? Right? And we both went, I don't hate that, right? The Giants could use 2 good tackles, and that would be a value. Well, Josh Jones off the board. Matt Peart, really the next player available there. And I think it gives them 2 guys that have a serious chance to start as bookend tackles for quite a while. Peart, more work to do than Thomas currently. And right after that, they get Shane Lemieux. I mean, it is the 5th, but we talked about the 4th being a sweet spot for guards, and he really just reloads the entire offensive line. Honestly, picks up 3 guys that can start on the offensive line in Thomas, Peart, and Lemieux, and rebuilds the front in front of Daniel Jones, which they needed to do desperately. And the other pick there, the balance pick after Peart, is round 4, pick 110, Darnay Holmes, the guy you love, out of UCLA.
Really
corner
love him.
Who I thought he was very good. You were higher on him than I was, but I thought he was very good. He had an excellent week at the Senior Bowl. The question was, is he going to play outside? Is he going to play in the slot? UCLA, he played a little bit more outside, but in the pros, he's probably a slot. Showed that he could hang. This is one of the guys that Dion loves, right? He attended Dion's camp, won the sort of MVP of Dion's defensive back camp. So that speaks, to you, depending on what you think of Dion as a defensive back. Tend to hold him in pretty high regard. I think he has a decent eye for that position in terms of talent. So we're talking about within the first 5 picks, Dave Gettleman pretty much completely reloads the offensive line for the Giants and gives the secondary a major infusion of talent with both McKinney and Holmes. Not bad. That's rounds 1 through 5 for the Giants. And after that, we're talking about lottery picks. And they really tend to focus, or at least they did in this draft, on linebacker. 4 out of the last 5 picks are linebackers. You can kind of tell that they need to reload. They had signed Blake Martinez as a free agent this offseason, and they go shotgun here. They get Cam Brown from Penn State, Carter Coughlin from Minnesota, TJ Brunson from South Carolina, and then Tate Crowder to finish it out towards the end of round 7 from Georgia. Cam Brown, very lengthy defender. Showed some real flashes at Penn State in terms of ability to close, ability to use his length to tackle. The major limitation, I was really excited to see him at the Senior Bowl. When I really dug into his tape after that, the major limitation I came up with is change of direction. If you ask Cam Brown to change direction, sort of reverse course in the middle of the field, he's probably going to get beat. He's not great there physically, but he can run side to side. He's more of a straight line player, and again, really tall, really lengthy. There's some tools there to work with. In the 6th round, if he hits, go for it.
Oh, yeah, huge value.
Yeah, Carter Coughlin, a guy we talked to 3 times at the Senior Bowl, a guy that played more edge for Minnesota, but a lot of people were projecting him to inside linebacker. And he, when I talked to him, was really, I said, what are you trying to improve? What are you trying to build as you get ready for the draft here? And he said, hey, I took the month in between our last regular season game and our bowl game, and I just hung out with our defensive backs coach. And I said, teach me about coverage, right? I know I'm going to have to cover more in the pros. Teach me about leverage. Teach me about alignment. Teach me about reading keys. And had really worked really hard on his pass coverage. Was sick as a dog, it turned out, the week of the Senior Bowl. We didn't know that, and was still making plays.
Yeah.
And just a very versatile guy. It'll be fascinating to figure out what their plan is for him. We talked about this with Isaiah Simmons, right? That whoever was going to pick him was going to need a plan. Is he this or is he this? If you try and make him do too much in the early season of his rookie year, it's probably going to be a stretch and he's going to struggle. Coughlin could be the same way. Sort of pick a role and either make him an edge rusher. He has some edge talent. I remember getting up early on a Wednesday at the Senior Bowl and reviewing his film because I thought, who is this guy? And, he made a bunch of plays on tape.
Talented tackles will lock, like guys that can move will lock him up. Like he's not.
There's a reason he went in the 7th.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But he's got some versatility and could sort of cover a couple of roster spots. Again, as a 7th round pick, that's value, right? Can definitely play on special teams. But if you get a guy that could come in, even if they do play him in the middle, and with those newfound skills, play a little bit more coverage, he is fast, he is more athletic and change of direction than Cam Brown, I could see him, carving out a roster spot on this team. The guy they pick after him, TJ Brunson, you said you didn't watch him. I did. Much more classic. He's in the Blake Martinez mold, and we both have an opinion about Blake Martinez.
Yeah, we do.
I think he's largely going to be like a Blake Martinez understudy. That's what I see out of TJ Brunson. Little more classic, thumper, rugged inside linebacker, not tremendous in coverage, not tremendous as a rusher, okay as a blitzer. There's a difference there. But I really think this guy comes in and tries to sort of carve out a role on special teams and probably backs up Blake Martinez in that more sort of heavy first 2 down linebacker role that Dave Gettleman still has love for and the rest of the league has kind of passed by.
Yeah, I do want to add a couple notes here as I also kind of roll through these guys. Shane Lemieux is probably not going to get to start this year because their current starting guards are Will Hernandez and Kevin Zeitler. But if either one of them goes down, I have the utmost confidence that he can step in. And I don't want to say not miss a beat, but that is a very, very,
the drop
very,
off is a lot more shallow.
Yeah, the swing guard potential for him is extremely high. And he doesn't make either of those other guys expendable, but he gives a little bit of security to Daniel Jones that your offensive line is not going to completely fall apart if you lose a guard. And then Parrott, I think, is also, like, Andrew Thomas is probably going to beat out Nate Solder for left tackle. I would be shocked if he didn't. But Parrott, I think, also can beat out Fleming for right tackle. So, there's a high chance they're going to be starting 2 rookies at both tackle spots, but the offensive line is still going to be much improved, and the depth is better. On Darnay Holmes, I wanted to give a little note here. His movement skills are spectacular. Not great long speed, but in terms of fluidity and footwork, I mean, he is a born nickel. He's like the ideal nickel. And zone awareness is high. He's an extremely smart kid. Keep in mind, he graduated from UCLA in less than 3 years. He is freaking brilliant. Like, he trains with a chess coach in his free time because he wants to train his mind on how to think ahead, knowing when to attack, how to set traps. Like, he's a very tactical personality that's also just extremely, extremely smart. Almost intimidatingly smart. But Chip Kelly loved him for that. And Joe Judge, who considers Chip Kelly a close friend of his, and also keep in mind, Joe Judge is pretty damn smart in his own right. He could get his PhD right now if he wanted to. He just has to finish his dissertation. But I mean, he did everything else you need to get a PhD. So he's an extremely smart guy himself. So I think he respects the intelligence of Darnay Holmes, and just throwing that on top of his movement skills and technical development, like that dude's going to play in New York for a really, really long time. He's going to be a high-level nickel, and he's probably going to be one of the better interviews on the team for a long time, too, because he's a really good dude, and he's smart. I love every time hearing Darnay Holmes speak. Like, I really do. He's a magnetic personality, that is brilliant. So I think he's going to be a fan favorite in New York. And then after Darnay Holmes, I mentioned Shane Lemieux, Cam Brown, Carter Coughlin. Like, I'm in complete agreement. Like, it's boom or bust for Cam Brown, but I think he could probably at least carve a role on special teams as a rookie. And then Carter Coughlin, I think it just kind of depends on how they use him, but there's some tools there for him to play multiple positions. And then I don't really have any strong opinions on Williamson or Crowder. They're probably camp bodies is my best estimation, but looking at the class as a whole, if you're getting a starting left tackle, a starting right tackle, a starting nickel, a starting safety / whatever the hell Xavier McKinney's going to be, a high-level swing guard that could honestly start for probably a lot of teams, but he just won't in New York because of who their current guards are, and then probably just a bunch of special teamers and high upside guys at the linebacker on day 3. Like, very, very, very solid class for Dave Gettleman. Maybe no true superstars in it, but at minimum some high-level starters that I think are going to be a core part of their talent for a very, very long time.
Yeah, they definitely cleaned up in a way that they haven't in a while. And just one note about their drafting tendencies, because that's always interesting. They really went chalk on selecting players from bigger schools. Parrott from Connecticut was really their only stray from the more classic football factories. You know, they got players from Georgia and Bama and South Carolina and the Big Ten. They really didn't go very far off the beaten path. You'll see some teams, especially in the later rounds, really go towards smaller schools, Division II. Not the case with this year's Giants class, but a very, very solid class. And we're just going to move geographically down the coast a little bit and talk about Philadelphia.
Yeah, this is a touchy subject. It's a touchy
I was waiting
subject.
for how you were going to frame that. And that was about like I figured you'd frame it, which is, we have to talk about this now.
See, Eagles fans are fascinating to me because I happen to like the class, and it's funny because then they'll chirp at me on Twitter and say how much they hate the class, and then even if I agreed with them and said, oh, I hate the class too, like if let's just say I pretend I agree with them and say I hate the class, then they come back and be like, hey, screw you, man. Howie knows what he's doing. Like, contrarian till they die, and I love them for that. But Eagles fans, man, you guys got to calm down. Like, it's a good class. Jalen Reagor, I get it. You love Justin Jefferson. You love Denzel Mims. There's some T. Higgins fans out there. I get it. But when you look at the offense they're building, I literally did a film room episode on this a couple weeks ago. Go watch that. They're trying to be the Chiefs. Howie Roseman has consistently cited the Chiefs in terms of how to build a roster throughout this offseason, which is speed, 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 speed. Like, if you can run 4 verts as much as humanly possible because you have a whole bunch of guys that run 4.4 or better, do it. Because guess what? When you have that much speed, it doesn't matter if they're playing zone coverage or man coverage. Everything turns into man coverage when you got 4 guys running 40 yards down the field. You know, like at some point, you're going to have to overload the safeties. You're just going to run by corners, like turn everything into a track meet. And if you have enough guys that can win the track meet, you're going to put up points. That's how KC does it, and that's how the Eagles want to do it. So you take Jalen Reagor, who has legit 4.3 speed. I don't care what he ran at the combine. Like, we know he runs 4.3. After he dropped some weight, and he got back to his actual playing weight, guess what? He ran 4.3 again. I know, funny how that works. But legit deep threat. He didn't run a full route tree, but the routes he did run, he was really good at them. He had some concentration drops, but he also flashed some really good ball skills on jump balls. Shades of Steve Smith in terms of a competitiveness with the ball in the air for a smaller receiver. Not saying he's Steve Smith, but on a few of those jump balls, he sure as hell looked like it. But in terms of fitting the philosophy they want to build of being able to attack down the field and also attack in space with the quick game, that's what Jalen Reagor is. And he fit that better than Justin Jefferson and Denzel Mims and T. Higgins and all those other receivers. So, I don't want to hear it that, oh, they took the guy with the lower grade. For what they want, they took the guy with the highest grade. I promise you that. He is what they want and what they needed.
Yeah, Rager is a very skilled receiver. He has that deep speed for sure, but that is not all he is by far. He is very solidly built, not as physical as Steve Smith. I don't know if you saw that highlight tape on Twitter that came out of Steve Smith's sort of more physical moments in the league, and it just reminded me like how physical Steve Smith was. Rager is physical. He's not that physical, but definitely plays bigger than his size on jump balls. His routes are sharper than a guy like KJ Hamler. He's more solidly built than a guy like KJ Hamler. He is a complete receiver for college. Obviously, he has to make some adjustments to the pros, but he brings a lot to the table for Doug Peterson and his offense. This next pick, I don't know. There's been some conversation about it. You have any thoughts?
So I'm a believer in the philosophy of you're only as good as your worst quarterback, meaning, you can have a really good roster around you, but if your quarterback takes one bad hit to the knee, guess what? Your season's over if you don't have a plan. And Carson Wentz, while he was healthy last year, and he's only averaged 2 missed games a season, which isn't that bad, but those 2 games can be the difference between, say, getting home field advantage or being a wild card team. Like, there's usually not that big a difference between the 1st seed and the 6th seed in terms of overall record. Like, it's rare to have like a 13-3 versus 9-7. Like, a lot of the times, like this past year, going down to week 17, like we saw the 49ers and Seahawks both, like they could have either been the 1st seed or like the 5th or 6th seed, with one game in week 17. So again, if you risk having a subpar backup quarterback, even if you don't lose your quarterback for the season, that can still wreck your season if you don't have a plan. And so
you say this to me as a Bears fan.
Yes. The irony is not lost on me.
Okay, good. And we continue.
But, Howie Roseman, in his interview since the draft, has cited all of the seasons. It wasn't just the Nick Foles year. All of the seasons where backup quarterbacks, going back to the Donovan McNabb years, Michael Vick came in as a backup. Like, all the times they won their division because they had a competent backup that could either win a couple games for them or just finish the season strong for them like Nick Foles did. If they have a competent backup last year against the Seahawks when Carson went out, there's a decent chance they could have won that game. Now, would they have lost the next week with all the injuries they had? Yeah, probably. But still, I would hate to have that team, if they were healthy, get bounced out of the playoffs because they didn't have an answer for if Carson Wentz took a bad forearm shiver from Jadeveon Clowney. Like, you have to protect yourself from the freak scenario. And in the grand scheme of things, I think a 2nd-round pick is worth that, especially when you look at some of the higher paid backups around the league. Marcus Mariota's making $9 million a year. Jalen Reagor is making, not Jalen Reagor, the other Jalen Hurts is making almost nothing. You're getting a high-quality backup quarterback for basically no money, which means you can use that $9 million on something else for the roster that you need. I know a lot of people are begging for corner, whatever. Like, that gives you cap flexibility for the following years to use that money elsewhere. And I think he was probably the 3rd best quarterback in this class behind Burrow and Tua. I thought he was better than Jordan Love. I thought he was better than who's the kid that
Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert. Like, he's a really, really good quarterback. Like, historically accurate quarterback. Like, don't make the mistake of thinking that freshman Jalen Hurts at Alabama that couldn't throw the football is the same Jalen Hurts as he is now. He was top 3 in the country in downfield accuracy percentage in back-to-back years. Like, even when he was at Alabama as a backup, he played significant snaps because they were blowing everybody out, and he led the country. Like, his accuracy percentage, his on-target accuracy percentage that year at Alabama was higher than Joe Burrow's was this past year. Like, he is an accurate quarterback. He's mobile. He's tough. He's a leader. He's dirt frickin' cheap. And if Carson Wentz takes a bad hit and has to miss a game or two, which statistically, again, he averages 2 missed games a year over the first 4 years of his career, Jalen Hurts can win you games, keep you in the hunt for the 1st or 2nd seed, get you home field advantage. When Carson comes back, again, Carson's an MVP caliber quarterback. Jalen's not going to take his job, but he can protect the Eagles from the worst case scenario. And for the price of a second round pick, that's worth it. I don't care what Eagles fans have to say about it. You're wrong. Protecting your roster from the worst case scenario is worth a second round pick. I get it. I would love a corner too. But a corner's not going to help you if you're having to start some scrub backup quarterback because Carson goes down. That corner does not outweigh having a good backup quarterback. It just flat out doesn't.
Yeah, almost nothing outweighs quarterback in the NFL, and there are times and places to call, too far or too much in the pursuit of that, but not many, because the balance is you don't have it, you don't get it, and you don't get any farther, and that's the bottom line in the NFL. I know a lot of fans hated this. I think it's a perfect move if Carson can't stay healthy or if he takes that bad hit. The Eagles have a proven leader who's improved at every stop. At every step of the way, he has shown the ability to be a captain, be a leader, improve his own physical skills, hold his surrounding cast to a higher standard. It's just a perfect description for a backup quarterback. Again, is he going to be a starter? And I think that's what a lot of Philly fans get hung up on is this guy here to take Carson Wentz's job? If not, then X. Well, no. He's not there to do that. I don't think anybody had the plan that he should. However, if Carson's out of the picture for any length of time, Hurts gives you a much better option than a lot of things that were available at a much cheaper cost, as you said. So it's, I think, a very large gap that he steps into that he can fill for the Eagles for quite a few years. And that, like you said, definitely worth a second round pick. One more thing I forgot to say about Rager. The player that should probably love the Rager pick most on the Eagles roster is Miles Sanders.
Yeah.
Because Rager's going to pull those defenses so far that they're not going to be able to effectively stack the box. And if they do, he's going to punish them. And Miles Sanders has got to be laughing his way to the bank based on those moves alone. So you talked about them going after speed. And in round 3, they do exactly that. They go after Davion Taylor, the outside linebacker from Colorado. I thought it was a little early for Taylor. His speed is tremendously impressive as a linebacker. Yeah. He's a little bit light, and I don't think his processing is right there. He's got eye-popping run speed, but his processing speed and his attack mentality, I put in the sort of still developing category. And at his size, that's a big deal. He's 225. He's going to need both of those things to improve before he's a regular full-time contributor on defense. If he does, if he's able to improve those things, the ability to attack, and again, that mental processing speed to say, I can use this run speed to its full ability to get there and hit somebody, he'll be a very valuable pick. I thought it was a little bit early, certainly more earlier than I was comfortable picking him, but I see what they're trying to do. Again, if you are going to build a track team, you better get ready to defend a track team, and Davion Taylor has speed to do that. The guy they picked after that, I thought was actually a sort of more in-line pick with what they're trying to build, and that's Kayvon Wallace, the safety.
He's also a better player.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Again, we talk pretty often about this question you ask me all the time. Hey, if you swap the positions that they were drafted in, would you be more comfortable with it? And quite frankly, in this case, I would. If you pick Kayvon Wallace ahead of Davion Taylor, I think I feel better about Taylor and better about Wallace. Wallace gives the Eagles a really versatile defensive back that they can move around to account for matchups, and the NFL is a matchup league. And although he's listed as a safety, and that's largely where he played at Clemson, some of his best reps on tape that I saw were as a true nickel slot defender, where he was lined up on the slot in man, and he is excellent at man coverage out of the slot. Like, I would say if you had called him again with a label, a nickel corner, he would have been the top nickel corner in this class. Like,
or at least one of them.
Yeah, there's several good nickels in this class, but he would have been way up there if he had specialized in that one sort of specialty or position. He's physical. As long as they don't rely on him to play a lot of single high, I think he's a valuable starter that you can move around. Nickel is the new base, so again, he is a starter in base probably by midseason for them.
And I mean, he's really good hips, really good feet. I think his ability to mirror routes from a two-way go again in the slot, which is a crucial, like you can't just, play inside technique and then say, okay, run everything outside. Like you have to be able to take routes in either direction, unless you're in like a Mike Zimmer type system where all their nickels just play outside and then funnel everything into the linebackers. But not every system's like that. Like most systems, like you have to play head up on the slot receiver and then mirror in either direction. And he can do that. His one problem, he struggles to catch the football. There was a lot of potential interceptions, potential huge plays he could have made where, I mean, again, he uses those feet and hips and technique and, eye discipline and all that stuff. And he gets to the ball and then dropped it. So I really want to see him finish more plays at the NFL level, but at least it's encouraging to me that he's getting PBUs, even if the PBUs are dropped INTs, but at least he's getting to the ball. So again, for a 4th round pick, you're getting a very high quality nickel. I do wonder how they're going to be using all of the other nickel type guys on their roster, because just like Chicago, it seems like they have like 4 or 5 of them, but that's a problem for them to solve another day, I guess, because, I mean, shit, they have a good football player on the roster now, so I can't really argue against it that much. Jack Driscoll. So I saw something interesting that I guess they're thinking about putting him at center, even though he was a tackle.
I hadn't heard.
I can, give your thoughts on Driscoll, and I'll look it up. Just maybe I'm psycho, but
I didn't have a ton of thoughts on Driscoll. I thought he was sort of a 3rd-tier offensive tackle, which is about where you're going to get to in round 4, especially in this draft where there was a run very quickly. There was a lot of, we talked about this being a very solid draft for tackles, and it was, but a lot of them went early, and we talked about that in our review last episode of the Dolphins pick. Out of USC, they went a little bit early because they had to. They had to grab a tackle because the shelf was coming. They were going to drop off to the next tier, and they really needed somebody that could start. So they went after Jackson as a tackle. I don't know that the Eagles were in a similar position, but again, the value of tackle was a little bit inflated as it typically is, and if you wanted to get somebody that you wanted to contribute, you're probably going to have to pick them about a round early. That's kind of how I felt about Driscoll. Maybe they felt better about him as the quote-unquote, it's funny because they picked 2 tackles from Auburn, and I actually thought the other one was better, but he had injury concerns, and we'll talk about Prince Tega Winogo in round 6 when we get there. What'd you find out about center? Anything good?
Yeah, I'm reading, and I guess he during the off season, because he had a few months to work with, he taught himself how to snap and kind of the different footwork and hand placement that comes with being a center before the pro day, and then he did it at the pro day, and the Eagles like what they saw, so they're kind of keeping that in their back pocket of having him kind of be a swing everything. Like not just swing tackle or swing guard, but also potentially a center. Like just whoever goes down, he can do it. Which I don't recall the last time I saw anybody do that. But
yeah, that's like a 5-tool offensive lineman. I'm not sure that I can think of another player that could do that really, really well.
Maybe Larry Allen. But that's about it.
But I don't know that Larry could have played center like he was. Anyways, he probably could have. I wouldn't put much past Larry Allen.
But I guess he looked like a natural, and the Eagles were like, "Oh, okay, hello." Like that's something we can use.
That's not true. Whitehair.
Oh, that's true.
Cody Whitehair.
Yeah,
because he played tackle at Kansas State, did it very, very well. I actually thought the Bears probably should have or could have played him at tackle. They moved him to guard during the preseason, and then famously, right at the end of his first preseason, said, "Oh, nope, we're going to have you play center," and literally started him at center in his first NFL game. So I guess one other example I can think of, but it's not very common, that's for sure. But
still, I mean, if he even is 90 or 80% of Cody Whitehair in the 4th round, that's...
Oh, it'd be tremendous value. Yeah.
I'll take that all day.
That'd be great. And 2 out of the next 3 picks are John Hightower and Quez Watkins, wide receivers from Boise State and Southern Miss, respectively. And this is Howie again saying that he wants that Chiefs model, and he wants it for sure, not if one guy goes down or another guy goes down. He wants speed all day. And I say that because Hightower and Watkins are pretty much the same guy In terms of physically, Hightower's 4'4", Watkins is 4'3", They're both just over 6 foot. They're both just about 185-ish pounds. So a little bit slight, really fast, definitely sort of more down the field receivers in their respective offenses. But they really are to fill in behind Jackson, Rager, and Goodwin, Marquise Goodwin, who they picked up in free agency. It's the shotgun approach, and you can tell Peterson and his staff don't want to be caught short in that particular asset for their offense, which is down the field speed, so they can open up everything underneath and, like you said, turn most things into a track meet and man coverage down the field. If you have that much speed running down the field, at some point it all becomes man, and they don't want that to be dependent on one player's health.
Yeah, like it's eventually you're going to get a guy that runs 4-3 matched up with a safety down the
Who
seam.
doesn't?
And that's your opportunity to strike. That's what the Chiefs do, and that's what they want to do. Last year, after Deshaun Jackson went down, after that speed element left their offense, they never really recovered from that. But in the first couple weeks, particularly week 1 when D-Jax was healthy, I mean, they were really, really, really good as a passing offense. They were top 3, I think, in the NFL that week in terms of yards per play, and then 21st the rest of the year. So, again, speed makes a big difference. And now they're going from one guy on the team that runs 4-4 or better to now having 5 receivers on the current roster that run 4-4-3 or faster. So, again, it's speed, speed, speed with this team. I love what Howie did. And I also loved the Jalen Hurts pick. It took a lot of guts. Overall, I'm a big fan of this class. And even if maybe it doesn't pay off as much in 2020, I think looking at 2021 and 22 and 23, this class is going to pay massive dividends for them.
Yeah, and the guy they got down late, Prince Tega Winoga, was a guy we were really excited about seeing at the Senior Bowl. He got flagged medically, which is probably why he fell. We've talked about medical concerns being a bigger deal. But honestly, I think he was the better of the 2 offensive tackles they took out of Auburn. He's got great size, solid starting resume in the SEC. If he stays healthy, even as a quality swing tackle, because, again, Philadelphia's starting tackles right now are pretty decent, that's amazing value. If not, he was a round 6 pick. No harm, no foul.
Yeah, I mean, you can never really have enough of them. And I guess since the only reason he fell was because of injury, I mean, might as well just kind of roll the dice and see what you got for a 6-rounder. Casey Toohill, I think we're both in agreement that's a camp body, maybe special teamer at most.
I would say special teamer. He's got a special teamer mentality for sure. So it'll be interesting to see, if he sticks. I honestly think he's, well, anyways, we'll just see. We'll just see about that.
Yeah, we'll leave Casey Toohill at that. But overall, again, love this class. I don't care what you say, Eagles fans. You guys nailed it. Moving on to Washington, again, kind of moving down geographically through the division. Look, I'll just kind of read out the whole class, and then we'll kind of attack it bit by bit. Round 1, pick 2, Chase Young, no-brainer. And then they didn't have another pick until the 3rd round, where they took the very versatile Antonio Gibson, one of the more intriguing offensive weapons at any position in this class, mainly because he can play any position. Round 4, pick 108, took Sadiq Charles, offensive tackle out of LSU. And then their 2nd, 4th rounder, they got Antonio Gandy Golden, a huge wide receiver out of Liberty, another Senior Bowl alum. Round 5, well, they had 2 5th-round picks. The first one was Keith Ishmael, the center out of San Diego State, and then Kaliki Hudson, the linebacker out of Michigan. And then they had a pair of 7th-rounders as well, in Cameron Curl, the safety from Arkansas, and James Smith-Williams, the edge from NC State. So I'll start with Chase Young, who, other than Joe Burrow, was kind of the most obvious pick in the draft, just because he's the best player in the draft, regardless of position. He is the best pass rusher I have personally ever evaluated in terms of grade. I mean, I'm talking better than Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Khalil Mack, Bradley Chubb, all these guys that have come out. Chase Young is better than all of them. In my opinion, he takes the same technical proficiency of the Bosa brothers, who learned under Larry Johnson at Ohio State. He takes a lot of the same techniques that they use, that classic kind of swipe rip and swipe chop that they have, like all of those signature Bosa moves, he does the same ones, but in the athletic frame and explosiveness of Myles Garrett. So he's a better athlete and he's bigger than both of them, but just as developed, which is a frightening thought. I think he can be, a lot of people have compared him to Julius Peppers. I think he can have that kind of career, which is saying a lot. It's putting first ballot Hall of Fame expectations on a young kid here. But if there was any, and I mean any, pass rusher coming into the league out of the last, 10 years that I would bank on being another Julius Peppers, it's Chase Young.
Yeah, adding Chase Young where you have two quality starters in Kerrigan and Sweat might not seem like the play when your roster does have other holes. Washington, not one of the stronger rosters in the division overall. But then you watch Young's tape and it's the smart play.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just stay put and don't screw it up, and Washington did that. There was a lot of talk about them trading that pick and what they could get for it. And look, there's probably a lot of value, and they could have filled a lot of other holes. Are they going to get anyone with the quality of Chase Young? And the answer is no. You don't have to ask what position. Chase Young is one of the most quality football players in the draft, if not the most quality football player in the draft. They stayed put. They picked Chase Young. He's going to start for them for a long time. There's no way to call that a bad pick. And then down to round 3, where we talked about Antonio Gibson, they list him as a wide receiver. I really think they're going to play him at running back. I think most coaches around the NFL had come to the conclusion that Gibson's sort of best value or most efficiency would come from getting him touches from the running back position. Can he play both? Yes, he played both. He's got size to play both, and he's got an amazing ability to bend the football field to his will, right? With his speed and power. He looks like he can't make things happen, and then he does with just almost purely physical gifts. So he gives them a dimension. He gives Washington this dimension speed-wise and top gear-wise that they didn't necessarily have, certainly not the running back position. He's got good size. The versatility is really cool. And the thing I think is really interesting, it makes him a little bit of a positionless player on offense. We talk about the defensive counterparts all the time. Oh, he's not a safety, he's not a linebacker, he's kind of positionless. But we don't talk about that on offense. We sort of hold rigidly to, oh, is he a wide receiver or is he a running back? Is he a slot receiver or is he a tight end? Like, what is this guy? And Gibson, if anyone in this draft, is a little bit of a positionless player on offense. And if you're talking about matchups and you have to match up with a newly sort of positionless defense, Gibson is a weapon that allows you to do that. So my guess is most of his early reps will come in the running back spot. Hopefully Darius Geis comes back healthy and we can really see the offense sort of grow forward on the backs of or around these two. And then, of course, Adrian Peterson's still there. We need to talk about Adrian Peterson sort of moving into Frank Gore-like territory, right? Frank Gore famously had big knee injuries, plural. Peterson, one big knee injury in his career. He's now 35 years old. He's still cranking out yards. He had almost 900 rushing yards last year. That's 100 more than Le'Veon Bell, for those of you keeping track. And if he keeps it up for just another year
We're not
year
bitter,
or two,
I promise.
Yeah. Well, Adam Gase is not bitter. Well, he was to start with, but there you go. If Peterson keeps this up for another year or two, we're going to talk about him in the exact same way of, well, he's got to shut it down soon. He's 37 in a couple of years, right? My guess is he could still be somewhere, if he wants to be, putting up 500 or 600 yards for a team because he's just one of those guys that's incredibly physically gifted. He's going to play a role. We'll see how big. Hopefully Geis is healthy and sort of minimizes that, and Gibson can come in and get some of those change of pace touches. But overall, their running back room, if they do choose to play Gibson at running back to start, is pretty well loaded.
I kind of think they're going to run a lot of two-back with Gibson and Peterson on the field, or Gibson and Geis on the field, and just to get them all on there. Because, again, when you look at, okay, just get the 5 best weapons we can find. Terry McLaurin's obviously going to be on the field. And then maybe Trey Quinn would be like their second best receiver. Kind of depends on how Antonio Gandy Golden comes along. But, after that, it's like, okay, who's our 5 best weapons? I have to imagine that at least 2 of those running backs are going to be in the top 5. So you might as well run a lot of 2-back and use Gibson on like sweeps or like misdirection to try to like pull defenders from the backside to help out Peterson and Geis, put them in the slot and dare them
motion
to match
to the
up.
slot out of the backfield seems like a real natural for him and his skill set.
How many teams have a linebacker that can run with him? Not a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe 3.
Yeah, not consistently. He is. Yeah, he's not exactly lightning in a bottle. He's not that super duper thin slice of top tier like Olympic speed.
He's not like Tariq Cohen,
but for a guy that's his size, over 6 foot, over 200 pounds, he's damn fast.
Yeah. I think he's going to end up on the field a lot, whether it's as a decoy or actually getting the ball, and I think it's going to be in a variety of ways. He's going to get carries, he's going to get catches, he's going to get screens. They'll probably get him involved in the return game. He
has special teams experience as well, so just one more thing that sort of gives him almost a guaranteed, productive roster spot.
If you're in a dynasty league and you're trying to find, like outside of the top names, like who's that guy? Who's that guy I can get? Last year it was Terry McLaurin for me. I drafted him in literally all of my leagues before, the Terry fever caught on in September. And I benefited from that. This year I think I'm going to double dip with, skill players in DC and go after Antonio Gibson, because I think just when you look at the talent on the team, he's one of the most talented weapons they have, and usually talented guys find their way on the field. So I'm really excited to see what he does. In the 4th round, pick 108, so this was a full 42 picks later, long ways later. Sadiq Charles, offensive tackle, LSU. To me, he's not super great in pass protection. I think he's okay. He can survive, but as a run blocker, I think he brings a lot of physicality. And I think, let's see if I'm refreshing myself on, so they're slated starting left tackle right now.
Oh, you're cheating. We were going to play a game here.
Oh, if you can name it,
That's
you name
right.
it? Out of curiosity?
Yeah, Sadiq Charles has a good path to playing time at tackle if he picks up the scheme pretty quickly. He was one of the more overlooked OTs in this year's class. I would say definitely second to lower second tier. But he's got a good starting resume in the SEC, which is nothing to sneeze at. And not much in front of him on the depth chart. So I will spot all the fans out there who are not Washington fans and say Morgan Moses, because A, they spent a high-profile pick on him. And entrenched as a starter as one of the tackles. Go ahead and name another Washington tackle besides.
And Brandon Sheriff doesn't count.
Nope. Besides Morgan Moses. And if you can do that and you are not a fan of Washington, I am thoroughly impressed, because I study the draft and have for the last 10 years, and I couldn't.
For what it's worth, so I knew they're slated starting left tackle before they took Charles. I'm pretty sure Charles is going to end up being the starting left tackle. But before they took him, their slated starter was somebody I had heard of, but I literally had no idea that he somehow ended up on Washington's roster. Cornelius Lucas.
Oh, now that I know because I'm a Bears fan. Right, and he just transferred. But if Cornelius Lucas is your starting left tackle, let me tell you, Washington fans, you better just get the bag now and cut the eye holes, because that is not somebody you want protecting franchise assets as a starting left tackle. Like, he is an okay swing tackle, mostly at right, because he is a tremendously large human. He's 6'8". And fills out very nicely, well over 300 pounds, was half a head taller than everybody at Bears camp last summer. You'll definitely be able to see him on the field, but you'll also see him when he goes out in pass protection and lets guys through and just absolutely gets your quarterback turnstiled. So not a guy you want listed as a starter, but after that, and because again, he's a new addition, most Washington fans are not probably familiar with Cornelius Lucas. After that, him and Morgan Moses, go ahead and name any of those guys. and it's tough to do. So again, Sadiq Charles can come in, and if he picks up the scheme quickly, which is going to be a challenge this year in the current circumstance, that guy could get on the field real quick.
Even if he doesn't pick up the scheme quickly, he's going to start.
Yeah, that's probably true too.
They are that.
Yeah, they got a bunch of bodies, and that's what they are. They're a bunch of bodies. So,
do you think Keith Ishmael is going to beat out Chase Roulier while we're on the topic of?
Ooh, this is really good. We'll skip Antonio Gandy-Golden and the massive receiving core for just a second, because Keith Ishmael caught my eye and impressed me at the Senior Bowl. I had no idea. I'd watched most of the interior offensive linemen. That was a need for the Bears, the team I follow. So heading into the Senior Bowl, I'd watched most of them, and here was a guy in a San Diego State helmet, and I was like, who is this guy? And he's a little bit undersized, but he is a fighter. He is technique savvy, and he won more reps than he lost. I thought, I gotta understand who this is. It was Keith Ishmael. Caught my eye, impressed me at the Senior Bowl for sure. I didn't watch him before that, but I made sure to watch him after that. And he needs to get stronger, but he's got talent. I don't know if he's going to beat anybody out as a rookie because of that physical development, but down the road, I could see him being a starter. He's got the mentality for it. He understands what he needs to do. He's not physically able to do it sometimes. But like I said, I think he won more than he lost at the Senior Bowl. Very scrappy, and I was very impressed for a guy that I didn't even know was going to be there. I think a good pick for Washington.
Yeah, I was trying to find if he had any wrestling in his background, and I couldn't.
Sure looks it. Man, he looks it. I mean, I know a lot of centers do. Yeah, his angle, the angles he takes, especially when he's trying to slide into double teams, his footwork, his stance, the way he squats. He's not a tall player to start with, but it keeps extremely low. His balance is great. Those are all sort of wrestling hallmarks typically. So I don't know if he does, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if he did.
You can tell a lot of the times when you see how they bend their back on contact, and he just looks like a wrestler, like a natural wrestler. But yeah, I'm a big fan of that pick. I think, like you, I don't think he'll start as a rookie because I think
I'd be surprised if he did, because there's definitely some guards some defensive tackles in the NFC East that could serve him as lunch physically.
Dexter Lawrence would have a field day against him.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys. Sure. Philly's got a couple of guys, right?
Yeah, Fletcher Cox would love that matchup.
Fletcher Cox versus Keith Ishmael is not tape I want to watch unless it's a snuff film. But, give him a couple of years and see what happens.
Yeah, but going back to Antonio Gandy-Golden, because we kind of skipped over him, you had a little interesting tidbit about the size of their receiving corps.
Yeah, in doing research for these, you find some interesting things sometimes, and we liked Antonio Gandy-Golden, again, another Senior Bowl alum. Great size. I think probably was better and more physically developed in terms of a route runner and a hands catcher than we thought he might be. So we said, maybe there's something here. Antonio Gandy-Golden, for those that don't know, out of a very small school, Liberty, 6'4", 220 something. Big dude. A great guy too. Very straight up on the character side. But I thought, he's going to add some size to their wide receiver core. So I get to the Washington roster and I start digging through, and I realize that they have Kelvin Harmon, Emmanuel Hall, Cody Latimer, Cam Sims, Jordan Veazey, Jester Weah, and Isaiah Wright. And all of those guys, all 7 of them, are over 6'2" and over 200 pounds. Emmanuel Hall, a little bit light at 195. Every other guy on that list, over 6'2", Hall's 6'3", and over 200 pounds. So I'm like, maybe he's not adding that much size. Now, not a lot of name recognition. Kelvin Harmon, yes, out of North Carolina. The other receiver out of North Carolina. Emmanuel Hall, very physically gifted out of Missouri, but was an undrafted free agent, was in Chicago's camp for a while. Cody Latimer has bounced around, started with Denver. And the rest of those guys are just guys, but boy, they got a lot of size on that receiving core, even if not a lot of names.
And I will say this on Antonio Gandy-Golden, fun fact, he's another one of those dudes who's just friggin' brilliant.
He's the Rubik's Cube guy.
Yeah, he's like an actual no bullshit genius.
Yeah.
Like he should probably send a letter to Mensa and see if they want to test him to get him in, because he's that kind of brain. He ordered an extra large Rubik's Cube. I think they're normally 3x3 if I remember correctly. And he ordered a 4x4, which mathematically is like way like orders of magnitude, way harder. Because he wanted the challenge, because he felt like normal Rubik's Cubes he was solving too quickly. Like he learned how to bowl because he wanted to learn bowling.
Oh, this is the story that kills me, the bowling one. Anybody that's ever bowled will have great appreciation for this story.
Imagine some 6'4", 220-pound athletic freak learning how to bowl and then within 2 months bowling a perfect game. As like everything this dude does, he's really good at it. I can't imagine where he's going to be in 3 or 4 years because everything he touches, he's really freakishly good at it. I think if he went to a school that wasn't Liberty, like if he went to like a big school with great coaches that could have like fully molded this freakishly athletic super genius, like he'd be like Lex Luthor. Like I don't know where he's going to be in a few years, but now that he's with an NFL coaching staff under Ron Rivera, and Ron Rivera is a very good coach, and he hires good coaches, like I am very curious to see what he's going to be like in a couple years because, I mean, goddamn, like he's an amazing talent. So I think Dwayne Haskins is going to like him being on the team a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I could, again, looking towards the future, which is always what you're trying to do with the draft, and you look at Terry McLaurin, Kelvin Harmon, if he continues to develop, and Antonio Gandy-Goldman, like, as a starting three. Like, again, if they continue to march towards their potential, that's not bad.
No,
that's not bad at all.
Not at all. What did you think of the rest of their day three with Khaliki Hudson, Cameron Curl, and James Smith-Williams?
Yeah, I actually think Khaliki Hudson and Cameron Curl are a lot closer than people think they are. Khaliki Hudson, 5'11", 224. Cameron Curl out of Arkansas, 6'1", 206. One's listed as a linebacker, Hudson, the other Curl as a safety, but they're not that much different. Hudson was one of those sort of hybrid, what is he, linebacker, safety, Akeem Davis Gaither was the other guy that was sort of like, oh, he's 220 on a good day. Is he a linebacker? Is he a box safety? Is it? And we've seen a lot of these guys, dime backers, people call them. That's Khaliki Hudson. Had some good games at Michigan. Cameron Curl is really opportunistic. You mentioned Peanut Tillman a little bit earlier this evening, and Curl is one of those guys really opportunistic around the ball, likes to force fumbles, decent hands on the interception, has some pure hands catches as interceptions, which you normally don't see out of safeties.
It's got a little peanut punch to him.
Yeah, little peanut punch, little speed, little special teams. Interesting guys, both of them will probably start on special teams, but could see a role on the regular defense. So I thought they were good value picks, again, where they were picked. The other thing about Cameron Curl has special teams experience, which is a great blend for a 7th rounder. Guy that's opportunistic around the football, played a little safety, could slide down into the box, and played special teams. That's a great value for down where they got him. James Smith-Williams has a little bit of juice, but more power. Again, if he can work his way into that particular rotation at his position on Washington's defense for any meaningful snaps as a rookie, I would say anything between 50 and 100 snaps for the season would be a win for the scouting staff on a 7th round choice.
I think the Hudson and the Curl picks were interesting because it seems like every year they take one. It's Josh Harvey Clemens, Sean Dion Hamilton, now Hudson and Curl. They've got like 5 guys on this team. And I think they also have Kevin Pierre-Louis too.
Yes, they do.
So like they have 5 guys with the same physical profile, and they're working through them till they find one that sticks. And I think they're doing that because last year especially, their linebackers were awful in coverage. Like they did not have anybody that could play man. In zone, they didn't really have the range to play that either. Not to mention their linebackers in general. Reuben Foster, I think after he got hurt, was kind of the one notwithstanding. But all the other ones besides Reuben Like, they were out of their run fits constantly. Like, no matter what Daron Payne did, like, there was nothing he could do. You know, he's eating doubles, he's taking away both A-gaps, and the linebacker still could not get into the fit. So linebacker was a massive problem for them last year, especially in coverage. So they're just taking as many light guys as they can to kind of play that role. They brought in Thomas Davis, just somebody who knows the defense. John Bostic is there, but I mean, barely. Like, they're hoping Reuben Foster can be the other starter. They're hoping that Cole Holcomb can develop into something, which maybe he can. I was actually a fan of Cole Holcomb.
Pierre Lewis played really well in limited role last year in Chicago, and when he got to a starting role, he surprised. He's been, career special teamer, a guy that I've followed. I really liked him coming out of Boston College, and he played much better than I expected him to. And got him a contract. One thing I can guarantee you, though, Washington's linebacking core, not probably going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Rivera and Thomas Davis come to town, your linebacking problems are pretty much over. Like, they understand linebacking, if no other position, or even better than every other position on the field. Ron Rivera, former linebacker. Thomas Davis could be a coach immediately, with as well as he's played for as long as he has in the league. Your problems are fixed. They're gonna find a way.
My feeling is that I think they brought in Thomas I think they signed him before the pandemic, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
But his signing became all that more important after the pandemic, when there's literally no offseason, and they need a guy that knows the system and can come in and play without an offseason and teach these young guys what the hell to do.
Yep.
So I think Thomas Davis was honestly their most important signing out of anybody. Maybe other than Chase Young, because they need somebody who can come in and play day one, or else it would be an absolute disaster. So it was a prudent signing at the time, and it became a crucial signing about a month after that, just by sheer happenstance. But anyway, that was all. That was all they had. They only had only had those 8 picks. Wow. I thought they had more. Oh no, I guess I'm thinking of the Vikings. They had a million friggin' picks. But overall, not
NFC team.
Other NFC, not the largest class for Washington, but very solid. Addressed some needs, especially some glaring needs at left tackle. Very high upside players in Gibson and Gandy Golden. Some interesting special teams guys, and then a generational pass rusher in Chase Young. Overall, very, very solid class. And that brings us to the last team in the NFC East. Even though they play in Texas, you'll never get me to understand why the divisions are structured the way they are sometimes, but historical rivalries are historical rivalries, and this is the division and how it's going to be forever. It's Dallas versus the world, especially in the East. But I think the Cowboys had, I don't want to say one of the top 3 classes, but I would feel comfortable putting them in the top 5 or 6. I think just from the sheer talent they got in the top of the draft, in CeeDee Lamb, Trayvon Diggs, Neville Gallimore, that's a pretty strong 3. And I'm not even the biggest Diggs fan, but getting CD at pick 17 and getting Neville Gallimore at pick 82, I mean, back-to-back massive values with an okay pick in Diggs sandwiched in between. You got Reggie Robinson in the 4th round, Tyler Biotish in the 5th, Bradley Anai, another massive value in the 5th, and then Ben DiNucci in the 7th. Again, I don't know if I would put them above Denver, Cleveland, or the Jets, but I would feel very comfortable saying that Dallas had probably a top 5 class in the whole league.
Strongly in the second tier for sure, and I don't say that as any kind of backhanded compliment. I think they did very, very well. Again, I think the draft fell to them in a way that was really beneficial. Look, Dallas needed firepower at the wideout position, and they end up getting one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver overall, in a historically deep class at pick 17. I doubt they thought he was going to be there. Made their choice very easy. He's tremendous, CeeDee Lamb, and the duo he forms with Amari Cooper should make NFC East defensive backs think about their A-plus game if they even hope to match up. Dak has got to be...
Gallup's there, too.
Yeah, but again, if you're talking about Cooper, Gallup, and Lamb, who are the alpha two, you're not bringing Gallup into the discussion. Yeah. He's a good compliment. I agree. But he's not CeeDee Lamb, and he's definitely not Amari Cooper. So Dak's got to be crazy pleased. He's got a bunch of options. The offense is officially loaded. They're set at running back with Zeke. I think Blake Jarwin's probably a better tight end than he gets credit for. The offensive line has been very, very good. It's loaded with talent. That offense is tough to find a hole in. Before it was kind of, okay, who's your number 2 or even number 3 wide receiver? Now it's, nope, that's not a weakness anymore. Not when you pick CeeDee Lamb at 17. Large receiver, great body control, physical, good speed, great routes. Like I said, one of the best in a loaded, historically loaded class. And, he ends up wearing a star on his helmet. I'm sure Jerry is pumped. Famously happy about players from the Oklahoma as a state in general, but Oklahoma University as well. Great pick by them. Trayvon Diggs, I'm the same as you. He wasn't my favorite CB in the class, but he has size. He has a lot of experience against very good wide receivers. He's going to get to practice against some great ones. If he dials in a few things, I went back and looked at my report for Diggs to say, why didn't I like him as much as I like some of the others? If he dials in 3 things, he's going to improve rapidly in the pros. And they're not, one of them is a difficult thing to do, I think, from talking to defensive backs coaches, but the other 2 aren't. His response to the stop comeback route right now is, it's terrible. And that's a technique thing. That's not a physical thing. He has the physical gas to keep up with those routes. He doesn't play it correctly. That's a footwork thing, a leverage thing, a balance thing. And he can get better at that. That is something you can coach out of him. The other one is something you can coach out of him too. It's a little harder to drive out of a player, but keeping his head up when he tackles. He had some notably awful reps trying to tackle players, especially in the LSU game, because he drops his head when he tries to tackle. And the offensive player...
To be fair, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is like an actual demigod. So
I get it, but it wasn't just Helaire, right? Jamar Chase had a couple of these too in that same game. He drops his head when he tries to tackle, and the offensive player either puts their hand on the back of his helmet and pushes him down, or just jukes at that moment and he misses him. So he's not a bad tackler. He's a physical tackler. But he's got to keep his head up when he tackles. And the other one is his habit. And this is a weird one. I can't figure this out because it doesn't seem like a technique that Saban or his coaches would teach. But he has a habit of turning away from rather than with the wide receiver. And he has the tools to turn and run with almost anybody. He's really good at that. But it makes him have a longer sort of recovery path to the wide receiver, and it makes his approach, usually right when the ball is getting there, a little bit awkward. And I think he could minimize a lot of that if he turned with the wide receiver and not away from him. Not sure why he does that. But again, figure out the stop comeback route, keep your head up when you tackle, and figure out how to turn with as opposed to against the wide receiver, and Diggs could improve very rapidly.
Yeah, that turn, so it's kind of a weird thing that Saban defenses do. I don't want to say weird. It's just kind of what they do. In certain coverage calls, when they're in too high, especially in too high, whether it's quarters or like a 2 read, they do a zone turn and they'll kind of carry the receiver. So like they start out like in press and then they zone turn, like face the quarterback while the receiver's running down the boundary. And they do that because they're supposed to key on the number 2 receiver to see if they break out to the flat, so they could do what's called a trap call and break on that. But what the disadvantage, as you said, is if the number 2 receiver doesn't break out, they're still supposed to carry that number 1 down the boundary. But if you're not looking at him, sometimes he can kind of get away from you. And if the safety is supposed to bracket over the top and help out, but if the safety's eyes get caught on something, then you're basically just not being able to see the receiver while being 2 steps behind and running down the boundary and hoping they don't throw a perfect ball right at you. So it's not supposed to be a risky coverage, but if you're not perfectly in sync with the safeties, it kind of is. And he just didn't really have the recovery that you're supposed to make that work. And I think offenses started to figure that out of like, hey, if we just like don't give him the number 2 receiver to trigger on, we're going to get that matchup down the boundary, and it's bombs away. LSU exploited that repeatedly.
Yeah,
so,
and he did make recoveries athletically. Again, this is not a guy that's limited with length or speed, but it just made the angle and the approach sort of desperate and awkward.
It was a little late.
Yep. And he was more forced to break up the ball after it was already kind of a catch, and he did that sometimes as well. So it's not that he can't do that. I just think he could make his life a lot easier, and maybe the Dallas coaches will do that for him by saying, run that out of 10 times.
Just play man, kid. Just play man.
Really turn with them and run, because you're actually really good at that. And that's, I think, what the coach's responsibility is to say, look, these are your strengths. We're going to put you in a position to succeed. We're not going to ask you to sort of stay religious to a coverage that puts you in a bad spot. So I hope they do that, because he's got a lot of talent, and he's not a bad corner. I don't want us to give the impression that, us saying we didn't like him as much as some other very talented corners means that he's bad or not worth the pick. I think he could develop really quickly. So the next guy is one of our favorites. Neville Gallimore, defensive tackle out of Oklahoma. And the first thing I want to say to anybody that hasn't watched Neville Gallimore is, dude can run, flat out fly. For a guy at his size. He's over 300 pounds. Love the explosion and the penetration in his game. You look at that rotation now for the Dallas interior offensive line. It's Dontari Poe, Gerald McCoy, Tristan Hill, and Gallimore. They have some firepower. They have some penetration. They have some disruption on the inside of that defensive interior. And teams typically hate that. They really don't like interior pressure. And Dallas has got 4 players right there that can help create it. So Gallimore is a really interesting ad. And like you said, at pick 82, a grand value.
Yeah, he was defensive tackle 4, because I had Ross Blacklock at 3. So he was DT 4 for me. And to get your 4th rated DT at 82 is highway robbery. So that first, second, third trio for the Cowboys was as good as anybody else in the league. Honestly, it's right up there with the Becton, Mims, Ashton Davis trio that we talked about last episode that was so damn good. Like, that one's right there with it. Reggie Robinson from Tulsa was their 4th round pick. I think that was probably appropriate value for him. I know some people liked him as like a 3rd. I wasn't part of that club, but in the 4th at 123 overall, I'm all about it.
Yeah, especially when you just lost Byron Jones, right?
Yeah.
And one of the best things about Byron Jones is he has the ability to play corner, played it very well, but he also can rotate to safety with his size, come forward, lay a hit on people. Robinson's not quite as physically solid as Jones, about the same height, a little bit lighter. But in terms of his experience and the versatility and the roles he's played, he's much more likely to replace that piece of Byron Jones for the Cowboys than Diggs is, because he can flop between safety and corner. And even at the Senior Bowl, we heard that. Like, well, is he a safety or is he a corner? And the answer is, does it really matter? He's back to that kind of positionless defense.
Put him on the field. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, and he was very productive. I'm with you. 4th round was the right place in terms of value to take him. Dallas was the right team in terms of needing to fill the hole of Byron Jones. Is Reggie Robinson going to slot in and replace Byron Jones 100%? No, but he can take 70 or 75, or maybe if they're lucky, 80% of those snaps that Byron Jones vacated, and somebody else can pick up the other 15 to 20, right? And that just feels like a good slotting and a solid landing place for Robinson, because he's, if anything, I don't want to say replacing, but he is trying to fill in for a player that was used in a very similar way.
Yeah. Moving on to the 2-pack of 5th rounders, and Tyler Biadasz and Bradley Anae, 2 value picks in my opinion. Biadasz I had about a 4th round grade on, so getting him in the 5th is decent value. Bradley Anae, I had a kind of a late 3, early 4, so getting him late 5 is exceptional value. Is Biadasz going to start over Joe Looney? Probably not, but I think having a good backup center that has starting potential, midway through day 3, again, great value. That's really all you can ask for on day 3 is getting guys who, even if they don't start immediately, you're not killing yourself if they have to. Especially with some of the injury issues that Dallas has had in the offensive line in the last couple of years, you kind of need that depth, especially as that line ages. So great pick for that. And then Bradley and I, we've talked a few times about kind of easy paths to getting snaps for day 3 guys, like going to teams where there's really not a whole lot there and you can see them hitting the field early. For a 5th round pick, Bradley and I is going to get a hell of a lot of snaps at edge, because really all they have is DeMarcus Lawrence and Tyrone Crawford, and that's about it.
Yeah, he joins this rotation of, again, this is when you look at a roster and you sort of forget how it all got assembled and you just look at what ended up there. I'd forgotten who they had, and he joins this list of long, rangy outside athletes that I was enamored with when they were in the draft, right? Lawrence is obviously the headliner, both in terms of production and contract and everything else, but they've got Tyrone Crawford, Dorrance Armstrong, Jalen Jelks, right? All these guys that I was pretty high on in the draft, again, as sort of mid-round edges with length and versatility, that kind of hybrid nature. Obviously, the Cowboys thought the same way. So I look at these guys and go, yeah. And then I look at the production, and outside of Lawrence, they just lack sack production. Armstrong had 2 last year in his second year, and that was it. He was the top sack producer besides Lawrence, who didn't have that many last year. Anai was being talked about, at least at some point, as maybe a bottom first rounder, top second rounder, one of the top edges in this class. I think as people got to his tape, they realized some of his athletic limitations and where some of his production came from. But where the Cowboys got him is just, let's just call that obscene value. Anai is a guy that could come in, contribute to Dallas' sack production as a rookie. And again, his path to playing time is beating out guys that have produced, 1 or 2 sacks. For Dallas overall, their top 5 sackers, 3 out of the top 5 are gone. Quinn, Bennett, and Collins all moved on this year. We talked about Lawrence being one of them. And who's the 5th? It's one of their defensive backs, Jordan Lewis. So there's wide open opportunity there. You got one edge who historically has had a great sack season and then last year had 6.5. You've got a defensive back that had 4.5 sacks last year, and then nobody else. Everybody else is gone. Quinn had 11.
By the way, you forgot one, by the way.
I forgot one what?
One extra long, rangy edge rusher.
Oh, did I?
Technically on the team.
Technically on... Oh.
Alden Smith.
Yes, I guess I did. That might have been a not so terribly Freudian slip.
But
no, again, yeah. Look, Dallas will take chances on those guys. They
and Randy Gregory also, I think, technically counts too.
Yeah,
But again, you're talking about, what is that? 6 guys that have like 34+ inch arms.
Oh yeah, no,
and then
they definitely, in looking at who has filled out their roster, they definitely have a type, right?
Yeah.
And Anai actually, strangely, doesn't really fit that type. He's a little bit more compact, a little bit more muscular. He's not small, but his production is better than those guys even in college. Like, he was more productive in college than those guys were, and hopefully that carries over for the Cowboys because they took a chance on him, but really not that much of a chance, right? This is a guy that, again, was being talked about in the high second round at the lowest low third round range. He gets picked in the deep 5th, right? If you get any kind of edge pressure, any kind at all, in the deep 5th, I don't care if you pick up 4 or 5 sacks rotationally in the deep 5th, that's a massive win, right?
And he's a better pass rusher than a lot of the guys that went ahead of him. I mean, technically speaking.
Totally agree.
Like, in terms of technique-wise, he is one of the most versatile technicians in this whole class. I mean, down at the Senior Bowl, in the one-on-ones,
showed out at the Senior Bowl in the game.
Oh, my God. He murdered people.
Yeah.
I mean, the variety that he showed. I mean, he's showing rips, he's showing chops and spins and speed rushes, one-arm bulls, like everything. He has everything in his arsenal. And to get that kind of guy, again, he's not a great athlete.
Yeah, it's a little stiff.
To get a little stiff, not super fast, but that kind of technician, again, just get like 5-6 sacks. Like, for a 5th-round pick, if you're just contributing that and having some special teams value, just add a little value to the room. Again, the bar you have to beat is like 2 sacks from Dorrance Armstrong. Friggin' DeMarcus Lawrence had 5 sacks last year. Now, he was top 7 in the league in pressures from the left side, which is, he plays left end. So he was top 7 in the league in terms of pressures, but he didn't have a lot of sack production. So if we can just get Bradley and I to finish off some of those pressures and get some sacks out of them, again, just chip in 5 or 6 here and there. That's all you need to make that pick worth it, and I think he's going to.
Yeah, I'm not betting against him, and I'm certainly not betting against him in the 5th round. I don't think I would have bet against him in the 3rd, just based on what we saw. Combination of on tape and at the Senior Bowl. Never thought he was a 1st-round edge rusher. Really didn't think he was even a 2nd because, again, just not athletically. There are athletic thresholds that make a bigger difference for edge players than in a lot of other positions that are sort of minimums. He was borderline on a few of those, and so I can see the hesitation. But in the 5th, throw the measurements out, look at the tape, look at the production at the Senior Bowl against a lot of the guys, right, that he's going to be playing against. And he, lights came on and he produced. And again, was at a very physical defensive program at Utah. He's got as much chance as any of those guys to produce. So when you round out the Dallas draft, Lamb, Diggs, and Gallimore to start it off, awesome. Robinson, a true fit for them with Byron Jones moving on. Biotish feels like such a Cowboys pick. Some teams just pick certain positions well, and Dallas has kind of nailed the interior offensive line for a while. Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, Connor Williams converting him from tackle out of Texas. This just feels like a continuation of that. Again, Biotish had an injury issue, but feels like he could plug in and play the interior, any of the 3 interior spots on that offensive line for a long time. And then Anai in the 5th, come on. Like, that's just crazy value. So, yeah. Anything else to say about the NFC East?
It's, as usual, it's going to be a bloodbath. I can guarantee you that. All of your preconceived notions about what are about to happen, guarantee you, they don't matter. Whatever you think is going to happen in this division is never what happens. So we can say all we want about how Dallas is the favorite or how the Eagles are going to come back healthy and get their revenge, like whatever. I don't even want to make a prediction on the NFC East because it's literally pointless.
And don't you dare in 2020, because 2020 will just smack you upside the head. You'll
2020
be like,
doesn't give a shit.
That's right. I thought this was going to happen. 2020 is like, oh yeah, hold my beer. So NFC East predictions is the last thing I'm going to be offering up in this particular year, but a lot of talent comes into the division. I hope we helped you make some sense of picks that maybe you thought didn't make any sense based on scheme, coaching, positional need, roster building. All those things come into it, and all these teams approached it with a plan, and I think did pretty well. So you want to get us out of here?
Yeah, guys, we're actually getting these under an hour 40 now, so that's progress. we're not dragging on as much.
That's progress.
In our world, what can you say? We're like 4 drinks into the night, but hey, we're getting better. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back next week with probably hit the Southern divisions. Is my best guess. AFC South, NFC South. I guess we can wax poetic about my Houston Texans for a little bit. I'm going to need some extra alcohol for that one, but that's future Brett's problem. So again, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you back next week talking about the South and the other South. And until then, later.